Hey Raiders Nation, let's dive right into the thick of what's happening with the Las Vegas Raiders because there's a lot to unpack, and honestly, some of these moves have me thinking deeper than usual. When you take a close look at the 53-man roster, the first thing that jumps out is the decision to hold on to Aiden O'Connell and Thomas Harper, two players currently dealing with injuries. Now, on the surface, it might seem strange to some fans. Why keep injured players active when you could stash them on short-term IR? O'Connell, for example, is dealing with a fractured wrist, a 6 to 8 week injury that would typically land him on short-term injured reserve. Thomas Harper's situation is a little different, but no less significant. He suffered an injury during the very first preseason game, playing just a single snap before having to leave, and information about his recovery has been scarce. What makes this fascinating from a team-building perspective is that it shows the Raiders are thinking several steps ahead. There's a strategy behind keeping two injured players active rather than immediately moving them to IR. It's not just about the present. It's about potential trades, roster flexibility, and preserving opportunities for these players to contribute when they're healthy. In the NFL, a short-term IR designation means a player must miss the first 4 games but return by the 5th week, or else they stay on IR for the season. With that in mind, you start to see why the Raiders might be comfortable keeping O'Connell and Harper active. They're betting on future contributions while keeping options open. It's not only about injuries, either. The Raiders have made other moves that show a deliberate approach to roster construction. Moving on from Terrell Edmunds, for instance, created room in the secondary, but also signals that the team has other plans to address potential gaps. And when you consider the offensive side, maintaining depth while juggling injured players like O'Connell also shows a commitment to maintaining competitive flexibility. This isn't just about filling a roster. It's about maintaining leverage, having pieces available for potential trades, and thinking strategically about how to position the team for the first month of the season and beyond. Looking at the quarterback situation, it becomes even more interesting. O'Connell is technically the backup quarterback, but the Raiders also have Kenny Pickett, who they invested in knowing there might be competition for the QB2 spot. The question isn't just about who starts. It's about how the team manages options and safeguards against setbacks. Could the Raiders bring in a third quarterback? Sure, but it's not necessarily a headline move. It's about preparing for contingencies, making sure they have multiple viable options at a position that can make or break games. In other words, even moves that seem minor are part of a much bigger picture. Switching over to the defensive side, the secondary is where a lot of fans' attention naturally goes. Safety has been a focus, and the potential to bring in someone like Justin Simmons or John Johnson could address weaknesses while also giving the team versatility. The Raiders have demonstrated a willingness to be proactive. Keeping Harper, for example, serves a dual purpose. He can play safety and nickel corner if necessary, which gives the coaching staff flexibility when evaluating who to activate or target via waiver claims. The bottom line is that every roster decision is interconnected. You can't just look at one player or one position in isolation because every move affects depth, potential trades, and overall strategy for the season. Another layer to consider is how the Raiders approach the waiver wire. There are talented players out there who could fit specific roles, and timing is critical. The team has just a narrow window to place claims, and the strategy behind targeting the right player can be the difference between securing a depth piece or watching someone else scoop them up. It's a chess match as much as it is football, evaluating talent, projecting potential, and anticipating what other teams might do. And with limited spots on the 53-man roster, every decision has ripple effects. Now, when we talk about defensive ends, the situation gets even more layered. Charles Snowden's potential suspension and Tyreek Wilson's position flexibility highlight why depth matters so much. Max Crosby and Malcolm Kuhn are foundational pieces, but beyond them, the Raiders need options. Bringing in a defensive end via trade or waiver could mitigate risk if suspensions or injuries occur. The roster isn't static. It's a living, evolving entity, and the Raiders are positioning themselves to adapt quickly. Janavion Clown, Zadarius Smith, Shaq Barrett, Preston Smith. These are names that could fill gaps depending on how the season unfolds. It's not just about current performance. It's about anticipating needs weeks down the line. Offensively, the team has its own complexities. Depth along the offensive line matters less in terms of headline moves, but is critical for sustained success. Targets like Christian Wilkins on the defensive tackle front ensure that if injuries occur, the Raiders aren't scrambling to patch a hole. The philosophy seems consistent across the roster. Maintain flexibility, protect key positions, and keep the team competitive even under unforeseen circumstances. Every player retained or waived is part of a deliberate plan, and every move signals an intention to be ready for whatever the NFL season throws at them. The cornerback room is another area generating conversation. With Harper's versatility in mind, the Raiders could look to add a corner who can operate in multiple roles, covering both nickel and outside responsibilities. Names like Juju Brent and Beanie Bishop Jr. could fill those roles effectively, providing depth while also offering developmental potential. The strategy is to layer talent, not just plug holes, but create competition and flexibility within the unit. Safety, nickel, outside corner, they're all interconnected. And if the team makes the right waiver claim, it could have immediate impact while also safeguarding against long-term challenges. What makes these roster decisions particularly fascinating is how they reflect the Raiders' culture. There's respect for players, a sense of long-term planning, and an understanding that each decision has consequences beyond the field. Keeping O'Connell and Harper active isn't just about winning games. It's about ensuring young players have opportunities, about giving veterans the chance to prove themselves, and about positioning the franchise for sustained competitiveness. The moves might not always make headlines immediately, but they create a foundation for stability, depth, and readiness for any scenario the NFL presents. And while fans naturally focus on big-name acquisitions or flashy trades, the reality is that much of this strategy happens quietly. The Raiders are balancing injuries, potential free agent pickups, waiver claims, and positional needs in a way that maximizes flexibility. It's about having multiple paths to success at every position: quarterback, safety, cornerback, defensive end, offensive line, even wide receiver depth, and ensuring that if one piece falters, there's another ready to step up. That kind of foresight is what separates teams that survive the grind of the NFL from those that crumble under the weight of injuries and underperformance. In short, every choice, every retention, every waiver claim, every potential trade is part of a broader strategy. The Raiders aren't just filling the roster. They're building a team capable of adapting, reacting, and thriving no matter what challenges arise over the course of the NFL season. Whether it's injuries, suspensions, or underperformance, the Raiders have positioned themselves to have options, maintain depth, and be ready to compete at a high level from week one all the way to the playoffs. All right, Raiders Nation, now that we've broken down the big picture strategy with injuries, depth, and roster flexibility, let's talk about where this team could make some real noise and how the Raiders might approach their next moves, especially in the secondary. Because if there's one area that has been under the microscope, it's the defensive backfield. The reality is simple. The offense is looking solid, maybe even top 10 caliber in the league, but the defense, particularly the secondary, is the unit that could make or break games in a high-scoring environment like Allegiant Stadium. Every fan knows it. You look at the cornerbacks and safeties and immediately start to worry about matchups against teams loaded with explosive receivers. Depth, versatility, and instinct are absolutely crucial here. Thomas Harper's situation complicates things a bit because he's a player who can play multiple roles. He could be a safety, he could be a nickel corner, and that versatility is incredibly valuable. But if the Raiders are expecting him to go on short-term IR or miss meaningful time, they need to think about who could fill that gap, not just temporarily, but in a way that maintains the integrity of the defensive scheme. And that's where potential acquisitions, trades, or waiver claims come into play. Players like Justin Simmons stand out immediately because of their experience and ability to make plays in multiple positions in the secondary. Someone like Simmons doesn't just plug a hole. He elevates the entire unit, communicates coverage adjustments, and brings leadership that can't be measured on a stat sheet alone. Of course, the Raiders also need to look at younger, high upside options who might be available on the waiver wire. Beanie Bishop Jr., for example, is a nickel corner who can provide depth and also push the starting group in practice, creating competition that benefits everyone. Juju Brent, with his length and athleticism, is another option that offers a versatile skill set. The idea isn't necessarily to find an immediate superstar. It's about layering talent and creating flexibility so that if Harper or anyone else misses time, the defensive system doesn't collapse under pressure. And the timing of these moves is critical. With only a narrow window to place claims or finalize deals, the Raiders have to act decisively. Waiting too long could mean missing out on a player who fits perfectly into the defensive puzzle. Let's pivot slightly to another intriguing area, quarterback depth. We touched on it in the first segment, but this deserves more attention. Aiden O'Connell is a backup, yes, but the Raiders also have Kenny Pickett, who they acquired knowing there could be a QB2 situation to resolve. But what about a potential QB3? That's where things get interesting. The team could look at a developmental player who brings upside, someone who could potentially compete for snaps in case of injury or underperformance. Players like DTR, John Walford, Kyle Trask, or even Taylor Heineke could fit that mold. These aren't necessarily headline-grabbing moves, but adding a reliable QB3 gives the coaching staff options and peace of mind. It's about maintaining competitive balance and avoiding situations where depth becomes a liability rather than an asset. Now, defensive ends deserve a deeper dive as well. Max Crosby is a cornerstone. Malcolm Kuhn provides support. Tyreek Wilson's versatility adds value. And Charles Snowden's potential suspension adds urgency to the roster strategy. If Snowden is sidelined for any period, the Raiders need additional bodies who can not only rotate in, but maintain pressure on the quarterback. Janavion Clown is an intriguing name here, and while he might not be widely discussed in mainstream conversations, his skill set aligns with what the Raiders need at defensive end: pass rush ability, situational awareness, and versatility. And then you have Zadarius Smith, Shaq Barrett, Preston Smith, all players who, if available, could impact the rotation. Depth in the pass rush isn't just about sacks. It's about creating pressure, influencing timing, and supporting a secondary that is still developing chemistry. Let's not forget the importance of defensive tackles, particularly Christian Wilkins. While the Raiders have some depth here, Wilkins is a key player who impacts both run defense and interior pass rush. If he's unavailable due to injury or other circumstances, it's critical to have rotation options. Even if the replacements aren't star-level players, they need to be competent enough to maintain gap integrity and keep the defensive front functioning. The overall philosophy seems clear: protect the foundation while adding layers of talent that can adapt as the season evolves. Switching to waiver claims again, wide receiver depth is also worth monitoring. While the starting core looks solid, there are always opportunities to add talent that could contribute on special teams or provide rotational support. Trey Palmer is one name that stands out, someone who could be a dynamic addition to the receiving group without taking away from the core lineup. These incremental additions are part of a broader plan, creating competition, adding versatility, and ensuring the roster has answers in multiple areas, not just the headline positions. It's also important to understand the Raiders' philosophy in terms of respecting young players. Keeping O'Connell and Harper active isn't just about roster mechanics. It's about giving these players a chance to earn their spot, to be seen by other teams, and to have an opportunity to grow within the Raiders system. This level of organizational respect isn't always visible to the outside world, but it matters immensely for morale and for building a culture of accountability and opportunity. Young players who might otherwise be waived or overlooked get a real chance to compete, and that benefits the team in both the short and long term. Returning to the secondary, the Raiders clearly know that pass defense is a critical concern. Adding experienced players like Justin Simmons or John Johnson is one approach, but they also need to consider hybrid players who can play multiple roles. A player like Israel Mwamu, a versatile safety who can operate in nickel corner situations, offers that kind of flexibility. This isn't just about filling holes. It's about creating an adaptive unit that can respond to injuries, matchups, and evolving schemes. Flexibility in the secondary can determine whether the Raiders survive high-scoring shootouts or get exposed against explosive offenses. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on our Las Vegas Raiders. And don't be shy. Drop your thoughts on the news in the comments below. A bombshell shook the NFL world yesterday as Lamar Jackson, the electrifying quarterback whose name has been synonymous with the Baltimore Ravens' identity for years, reportedly left the franchise and agreed to terms with the Las Vegas Raiders. The news has sparked a whirlwind of speculation, debates, and whispers across locker rooms, media outlets, and social media platforms, leaving fans stunned and analysts scrambling to interpret the implications of such a seismic shift in the league. Jackson's tenure in Baltimore was marked by thrilling runs, record-breaking plays, and moments of brilliance that redefined the quarterback position, making him one of the most dynamic and unpredictable players in modern football. Yet, despite his loyalty and the deep connection with Ravens fans, internal tensions, contract negotiations, and perhaps the lure of a fresh challenge in Las Vegas seem to have culminated in this unprecedented move. The Raiders, a franchise hungry for a transformative talent capable of elevating them into true championship contention, appear to have executed a masterstroke in securing Jackson, whose dual-threat capability can dramatically alter the trajectory of any offense. Rumors now swirl about how Jackson's presence will reshape the Raiders' strategy, offensive schemes, and locker room dynamics, igniting conversations about whether this is a short-term splash or a franchise-defining acquisition. The excitement surrounding Jackson's arrival in Las Vegas is compounded by the sheer unpredictability he brings to the Raiders' offense, creating endless possibilities for coordinators, teammates, and fans alike. Analysts and insiders are already speculating how Jackson's unparalleled speed, agility, and football intelligence could blend with the team's existing roster, potentially transforming a once inconsistent unit into a dynamic powerhouse capable of competing at the highest level. Questions abound regarding the chemistry he might develop with the Raiders' receiving core, the adjustments required in the offensive line to protect a quarterback known for his mobility, and the innovative play designs that could take advantage of Jackson's unique skill set. Meanwhile, whispers in Baltimore suggest mixed emotions among Ravens players and fans, many of whom still hold Jackson in the highest regard despite the surprise departure. Rumors of locker room tension, differing visions between Jackson and the front office, and the ever-present pressure of high expectations might have played a pivotal role in the decision, fueling speculation that this move, while shocking, may have been inevitable. As analysts debate the long-term ramifications for both franchises, one thing is clear. Lamar Jackson's shift to the Raiders promises to be one of the most captivating storylines of the upcoming NFL season. Financial considerations and contract details have also become hot topics of discussion in the wake of this blockbuster move, with sources hinting that the Raiders made a substantial financial commitment to secure Jackson's signature. Although exact figures remain speculative, insiders suggest a combination of guaranteed money, performance incentives, and potential extensions that make this deal one of the most lucrative in recent NFL history. The whispers extend to the front offices of both teams, as Baltimore navigates the fallout of losing a player who was once the centerpiece of their franchise strategy, while Las Vegas celebrates a potential generational talent capable of redefining the team's marketability and on-field identity. Rumors have surfaced about how Jackson's presence could influence ticket sales, merchandise, and overall fan engagement, adding layers of excitement and pressure to an already volatile situation. Critics argue about the risks of investing so heavily in a quarterback with a high-volume running style, which can sometimes lead to injuries, while proponents emphasize Jackson's transformative potential to elevate the Raiders into elite status. Discussions have permeated sports bars, social media platforms, and analyst shows, creating a pervasive sense of anticipation and uncertainty, highlighting how one player's move can ripple across the league and dominate narratives far beyond the confines of the football field. The impact of Jackson's transfer extends beyond the technical and financial realms, reaching into the cultural and emotional dimensions of both teams and their fan bases. Baltimore supporters, who have cheered for Jackson through highs and lows, now wrestle with feelings of betrayal, nostalgia, and curiosity about the future, while Las Vegas fans are engulfed in a wave of optimism, hope, and the intoxicating possibility of witnessing history in the making. Locker room dynamics in Las Vegas are reportedly shifting as veteran players and coaches prepare to integrate Jackson's personality, leadership style, and on-field improvisation into an established framework, a process fraught with both opportunity and tension. Meanwhile, sports journalists continue to speculate on the behind-the-scenes negotiations, suggesting that Jackson's move was the result of months of careful planning, secret meetings, and strategic maneuvers designed to maximize his career trajectory while positioning the Raiders for immediate relevance. The rumor mill has also turned its gaze toward other teams in the league, as questions arise about how this seismic event could trigger cascading shifts, trades, and roster realignments, reinforcing the perception that Lamar Jackson's relocation is more than a simple personnel change. It is a cultural and competitive earthquake with far-reaching consequences. As the story unfolds, experts predict that Lamar Jackson's debut with the Raiders will redefine expectations for both individual and team performance, prompting fans, commentators, and opponents to reimagine the possibilities of the upcoming season. From advanced analytics assessing Jackson's rushing yards and passing efficiency to game-by-game predictions of how he might dismantle defensive schemes, speculation runs rampant across sports media, igniting debates about who will benefit most from his talents and whether this partnership can translate into sustained success. Simultaneously, whispers about potential challenges, adjusting to a new playbook, building rapport with new teammates, and navigating the intense scrutiny that accompanies a high-profile move, fuel the narrative with tension and intrigue. The excitement is palpable as social media feeds overflow with reaction videos, memes, and analysis, all centered on the question of whether Jackson can replicate or surpass the magic he created in Baltimore. Rumors also hint at innovative offensive schemes, trick plays, and quarterback-centric strategies designed to leverage Jackson's agility and improvisational instincts. For the Raiders, the move represents not just a tactical advantage, but a symbolic statement. The franchise is now a destination for elite talent willing to make bold choices, raising the stakes for the entire league. This transfer, shrouded in both hype and uncertainty, promises to dominate headlines and conversations well into the season, cementing Jackson's legacy as one of the NFL's most electrifying and unpredictable figures. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay updated with exclusive news about our Las Vegas Raiders, be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that like button. We can't wait to hear your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next video.